So, history is weird, right? You know what I always found especially weird for a whole goddamn mess of reasons? Warfare, specifically European warfare between about 1600 to the start of the First World War, aka the prequel to the one that everyone finds so fucking interesting. You have fighting over religion, territory, succession, sometimes just stupid bullshit, but they're so nice about it. All the leaders would talk to each other, parade around in fancy gear, get fame and glory, settle arguments in a lot of cases, but using human lives instead of, sitting down and talking it out like the high society they often saw themselves as. Plus, these leaders hardly, if ever, fought directly in the battle. Come to think of it, most leaders in history haven't. Shout out to Halfdan Ragnarsson, absolute unit, that man. But I'm getting off track here and we're not even a minute into a short video. Also, some really wacky shit started to happen around this time, mainly because for the first time, soldiers had guns. Sure, they were basically just explosion-powered BB guns at this point, and not the high-tech death machines that you have today. They were cumbersome, delicate, loud, and smokier than a room 5 minutes after Snoop Dogg arrives. But they were easy to produce and easier to teach someone than hand-to-hand combat. Now, one byproduct out of the basically infinite results of the introduction of guns and other similar stuff like cannons is that modern battlefields were loud as shit. Sure, warfare has always been loud, but they were louder than my 9 a.m. alarm that wrecks my sleep so hard I'm thinking of suing it for aggravated assault. This has had varied effects over a lot of battles in history. Variables tend to do that, but one time it screwed with so many people so badly it caused an army to fucking attack itself. In 1788, Austria, centuries before it inadvertently dragged Germany into being a major player in a world war twice, was at war with Turkey because Russia had an alliance with Austria. Oh, how things change. And Catherine the Great had been doing her thing around Europe for a while and pissed off the Ottomans enough to come after her, meaning that the Russians had to come to the Austrians for help because of an alliance signed in 1781 between the two. See what I mean? This is worse than watching a late series episode of Gossip Girl. Fuck, that's an old reference. What are the kids watching now, besides Logan fucking Paul and shit like that? I feel like quite. Anyway, during this war, the Austrian army was hunkered down in the town of Karanzabes. I'm 99% sure I mispronounced that, but anyway. One day while the Austrians were setting up their camp, some of the cavalry crossed a nearby river to see if the Ottomans were gathering on their borderline like you do in Civilization, fuck The Sims, and ran into these people who I'm not even going to try and pronounce, but luckily for me, they're also known as the Romani. The Romani sold them schnapps and they started to turn up. Of course it was schnapps. This is basically a Monty Python sketch if I talk like John Cleese, which I will not! Some infantry then came across the river. Typical cavalry not inviting the infantry to party, fucking jocks. And the infantry wanted schnapps for themselves. Things got heated, then someone fired a gun, no one knows who because they were presumably tanked by this point, and the infantry and cavalry started to fight. One of the cavalry, who didn't speak the same language as the main army, seeing as they were hussars, fucking genius, fled the scene back to camp thinking they were being attacked by the Ottomans. Meanwhile, back at the camp itself, people saw the returning hussars and thought that it was an Ottoman cavalry charge, seeing as most of the army spoke different goddamn languages and everyone lost their shit. A commander at the camp started firing artillery at his own men as the rest of the army said, "Welp, royally f*** that," and started to retreat. The whole army started to retreat from the friendly fire battle. And the Holy Roman Emperor Joseph II was knocked off his horse and into a fucking creek like when I shank my 4-iron because I suck with anything below a 5. Side note, I love golf. Further cementing this whole thing is a gigantic comedy sketch. The Ottomans came in a couple days later, presumably very confused, and took the town. The Austrians, by some accounts, lost 1,200 men to injuries in the days after the battle with themselves. One person claimed that 10,000 casualties were caused, but there's no evidence to back this up, so I'm calling out Paul Bernard, who wrote a book about King Golf Ball over there, as a filthy liar. But still, you injured 1,200 of your own men that you have to pay and take care of and all that shit. The Austrians pulled a Roger Goodell on this one. Thanks for watching, and remember that a lot of Austrians during this war died because dysentery made them shit themselves to death. History is sometimes a lot like a night after a Taco Bell binge. See ya.